Good afternoon, students. I hope everyone can see my screen. So, a very quick recap. So, I have begun with the exception handling. In the last class, we have covered the exception hierarchy and the types of exceptions. So, we have understood that throwable is the supermost class in the exception hierarchy, which has two child classes. One is the error and the exception class. And we understood that error is not controlled by the programmer. It's not in the hands of a programmer. Examples, we have understood that stack overflow or memory out of memory errors are the best examples, which are not under the control of programmer. On the other hand, exceptions can be handled by the programmer in order to avoid abnormal termination of the program. And then we also understood the two different types of exceptions, that is checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. And the point to be noted there is checked exceptions are those which will be mandatorily checked during the compile time, and if not handled, then it will be raising compile time error, whereas unchecked exceptions are not going to be checked during the compile time. So you can either handle it or leave it. If you handle it, you can be sure that your program will not be terminated even if it encounters. If you don't handle it, so your program will be successfully compiled, but during the runtime, if any of the unchecked exception arises, since you haven't handled them and since compiler did not check them, it may be thrown, and the default JVM's exception handler will be handling it, and it just prints the stack trace, and then the program gets terminated. So up to there we have just discussed. Now what we will do is we will start examining about all those 5 keywords through which exception handling is achieved in Java, that is try, catch, throw, throws, and finally. So these are the 5 basic blocks through which exception handling is dealt in Java, and among these 5, 3 are the blocks. Try, catch, and finally are 3 blocks, whereas throw and throws are statements or clauses. So you cannot use try without catch or finally. You cannot have finally or catch without try, and you can have n number of catch blocks for a single try block, and once the control jumps to a respective catch block, then the control will never come back to try block. There should not be even a single statement in between try and catch block. Whether exception occurs or not occurs, finally is one such block that gets executed guaranteedly. So these are the points that we have covered in the last session. So theoretically we have seen. Now practically we will just examine how these things are implemented and what are the points to be noted while writing this exception handling blocks. So all such things we will examine it in practically. Now I hope all of you are going through the logic building exercises and also here hands-on exercises. I hope all of you are just performing and selecting those checkboxes and clicking on update completion status, and since many of them have been performing this, the access to monitor your activities are removed from faculty, from us. So it will be mailed to us for every 15 days as said by Wipro team. So once I receive, then I will get to know how many of you are really logging in into this app and how many of you are updating this completion status of the hands-on assignments. All that information I will just get to know once the Wipro team mails me your completion status. Now let's get back to the practical knowledge of this exception handling. Let me start my magnifier. So here it is, and so we already have created one small program, and then I have just shown you how the default handler will be doing. And this is one of the example which we have seen that where I have shown you three different varieties of exceptions are possible with this code. One is the number format exception, that is if args of 0 what you are providing, if it's not a number and if it is some character, then it will be throwing you number format exception. Similarly, if you are not providing two arguments as command line, then also it will be raising another exception, that is array index out of bounds exception. And then if the second argument provided by you, that is the divisor, if you are passing it as 0, then you will be getting another variety of exception, that is arithmetic exception, which we are saying division by 0. So these all are another examples for unchecked exceptions. These all are another examples for unchecked exceptions because they are not being checked during the compile time. That is the reason you don't find any compilation error here. You find the code proper and appropriate for being executed, but only things encounter when you start running the program with passing some character instead of a digit, or not giving enough number of arguments that are expected, or giving some arguments that are inappropriate, such that here in this case b value if you are giving as 0, so it leads to division by 0 exception. So these are the possible exceptions. So a good programmer always should know whatever the code he is writing, he should be understanding in the end user point of view, and then he should be able to deal with all such situations and then start writing the code. So that's what the main point to be noted. So whenever you write code, not just writing for the program to get executed, but also need to think in the end user point of view and examine all the possible cases accordingly. If such invalid cases occur, how your program should further continue to run, all such cases need to be kept in mind while writing the code. Accordingly, exception handling blocks should be written. So now let us start understanding this code. Now what I'll just do is I'll just remove this code and I'll write one simple method. So I'll just try to explain you everything with this only. I'm just using a method static void m throw new IO exception. So earlier, I mean in the previous session, I have discussed about the usage of try, catch, and finally, and throw and throws we haven't covered. Now in this session we are going to cover and also understand the ways of asking questions here. So throw keyword syntax is like this: throw space throwable instance. So this is the syntax of throw space throwable instance. What is the purpose of this throw keyword? So throw, as the name itself makes you understand, it is used to raise an exception explicitly. It is used to raise an exception explicitly. That means if you are designing some application where you want certain conditions to be checked, then in such cases, if the required condition is not met by the user while passing input, then you can raise exception explicitly so that you can give information to the end user to correct the input being passed. For that reason, we will be using throw keyword. So throw keyword is used to explicitly throw an exception. For example, if I am designing a simple registration form where user is supposed to provide his name, email, phone number, all such information, and if in the place of phone number field, if user is not giving 10 digits, or if he is not passing digits, instead of that if he is giving some characters, such cases we need to check, and then according to that we need to throw the exceptions. Similarly, if email id is asked in the application form, and if user is entering some text which doesn't contain this at the rate or dot com or co.in or something like that, immediately you have to raise the appropriate exception. So because we can't accept all such things to be stored in the database when clicking submit by the end user. So for that reason, we require in real application development to raise exceptions for certain condition checks. For that reason, we use throw keyword. So throw keyword is all about raising exception explicitly, and the syntax is throw space followed by throwable instance. Throwable instance means it should be an object of throwable class or its subclasses. That's what the meaning throwable instance. Throwable instance means it should be an object of throwable class or its subclasses. Indirectly, any of the exception. That's what the meaning is all about. And here IO exception is one such example of exception. And here you can see I'm just instead of creating an object with a reference variable and then further throwing it, directly we are using this new IO exception. Brackets missing. So this is what. So generally what we will be doing is, instead of having in single statement, most of them what they will be doing is IO exception OB equal to new IO exception, like that another statement will be created, and then here they will be writing throw OB. But industry doesn't encourage such kind of practice, because unnecessarily you are wasting memory for storing that reference variable OB in the stack. So in order to optimize that memory in the stack, what industry will ask you to do is directly use the statement like this across the throw itself, so that you will not be wasting any memory for the reference variable storage in the stack. So this is the way how you will be doing. So it's only for a demonstration. You can just try and practice lengthier applications where you will be having certain condition checks. And in today's session, I will even show you how we can create our own exceptions also. Here I am just using IO exception, which is inbuilt. IO exception is inbuilt exception. So here IO exception, you need to import this java.io, because IO exception is present in IO package. Most of the exceptions are part of the java.lang package only, but there are certain exceptions part of other packages as well. So SQL exception is present in SQL package, IO exception is present in IO package. Like that, there are certain exceptions which are related to specific packages, but majority of the exceptions come under the java.lang package, which will be the default package for Java. So here you can just see what I am doing is I have just created a class with the name exception demo, and then I have just created a method. And why I have named this method static is so that I can directly call this method from the main method rather than creating object for this class. We already have seen in the previous classes that static methods can be accessed directly from another static methods without the objects being created. Only for that reason I have just used here static keyword for this method yum. And here in this method I am not writing anything, just simply I am throwing an instance of IO exception. Now here just observe what I am going to do. I am just trying to call yum. I am just trying to call yum. So when I am calling yum, you can just see here this particular exception is not being handled. This particular exception is not being handled. So when you are not going to, when your method is not going to handle the exception, when your method is not going to handle the exception by its own, then what must be done is you have to declare throws. You have to declare throws. Understand this? I'll even show you try catch finally also. But time being, since I have already covered discussing that try catch finally theoretically, I'm just starting explaining you this throw and throws first. So throw keyword is used to explicitly throw an exception. In this case, I'm directly throwing without any condition check, but in real time applications, you will not directly throw any exception like this without any condition check. You are going to check for certain condition, and if the condition expected was not met, then only you are going to throw the exception. It's only for example purpose. Directly I am throwing exception without any condition check. Understand that fact. And here you can see what I have done. I have written throws IO exception. What is the difference between throw and throws? So throw is used to explicitly throw an exception, whereas throws is used across the method declaration specifying all the list of exceptions that the method might throw but not handled by the method. I repeat, throw is used to raise or to throw an exception explicitly, whereas throws is used across the method declaration containing list of exceptions that the method is possible to throw but not handled by the method. That means now in this method declaration you can just see that static void m throws IO exception, and it's not mandatory that you have to declare only one single exception. You can have any number of exception like this here. So you can also have here a number format exception. So you can have list of exceptions separated by comma. So another one, what else? Array index out of bounds exception, something like that. I'm not writing all that, but understand that you can have comma separated list of several exceptions. So what does it indicate is, it indicates that method m, which is saying that so and so exceptions are possible but not handled by me. So here method m saying that it is possible to throw IO exception or number format exception but not handled by itself. Then who should handle? The answer is simple. Whoever calls this method m, whoever calls this method m, it is their responsibility to handle all the exceptions that method m said that it might throw. So here method m is saying that it might throw this IO exception or number format exception, but I am not going to handle, because method m is containing some statements which are required by some other methods. So whoever will be calling this method m, it is their responsibility to handle the exceptions that method m said I might throw. In this case, method m is saying that it might throw IO exception or number format exception. And who is calling that method m? In this case, you can see from main method I am calling. From main method I am calling. And if you observe, main method is calling method m, and method m is saying I might throw IO exception and number format exception. Since main method is calling method m, it must only handle that IO exception and number format exception. So this is the purpose of throws and throw. So throw in order to explicitly throw an exception, whereas throws will list several exceptions that the method might throw along with the declaration. So this point to be noted. Now here the best advantage for going to IDEs, here when I move my mouse cursor, you can see 3 quick fixes are available. Here when I move my mouse cursor, you can just see 3 quick fixes are available. Surround with try multi-catch, surround with try catch, add throws declaration. If I click on add throws declaration, then main also will be having the statement add throws declaration. You can just see if I am selecting that, the error is gone, and here you can see again the same thing appeared. Again the same thing appeared. So this point to be noted. I hope everyone understanding. So when I haven't written anything and when I moved my mouse cursor, the IDE is giving me 3 options. Add throws declaration, because since main is calling M and since M is saying that it might throw IO exception or number format exception, it's the responsibility of main to handle them. If not, it also should be declaring throws that particular exceptions, so that whoever will be calling main, who will be calling main? By default, main is the starting point, so JVM only will be calling main. So JVM will be handling that exceptions if encountered. So JVM will be handling those exceptions if encountered. When I click this add throws declaration. So this is the point to be noted here. What is the other option what you have seen? So here the other option what you have seen is surround with try or multi-catch. So here you can see catch number format exception or IO exception. That means if number format exception occurs or IO exception occurs, so we are just asking is to print the stack trace. So in the last session also I have just brought this statement print stack trace. So what is this print stack trace? So print stack trace is the method that is used to print the program's execution stack. Print stack trace is the method that is used to print the program's execution stack. So this will be mostly useful by the programmers for debugging purposes. For whatever the applications they are going to develop, they will be developing with all points being considered, and they will be handling all the expected catch blocks. But what in case if any unexpected things happen, for knowing that they will be using this print stack trace method, which will be printing all the program's execution stack that will be used for debugging purpose. So this is the way how to handle that. You can also examine the third option, surround with try catch, like this. Rather than having in single catch block, you will be having different ways. So this is the point to be noted here. So this is how you will be handling, and here you can see to do auto generated catch block. Here you can write your statements. That's the only thing, because I'm using IDE's auto generating blocks. Automatically it will be raising this comment statement to do auto generated catch block, like that. So you can just remove this comment and fill in your statements. So these are the points to be noted. And another point here to be understood is suppose, just observe, in real time applications also, what people will be doing is they will be writing all the expected catch blocks first, and if any unexpected situation occurs, in order to get it resolved, they will be including the catch of superclass of all exceptions, catch of exception E. So this is what they will be doing. So here you can see, very simple. What I have done is, so the expected exceptions are number format and IO exception. Apart from these exceptions, if any other exception occurs, then rather than my program being terminated for an unexpected exception, what I will be doing is I will also include catch of exception as the very last block in my list of catch blocks. Remember this, it's very important. So in real time they will be also including the catch of supermost classes of all exceptions, like this, but it has to be written only in the last. What happens if I write it in the first? Just observe what I am doing. I am just cutting it and I am writing this catch of exception here. Now you can see error. Now you can see error being raised. The reason is, if you write catch of exception as your very first block itself, then since it is the parent of all exceptions, since exception is the parent of all exceptions, then any type of exception can be caught by this exception class itself. Any type of exceptions can be caught by this exception class itself. It can be number format exception, it can be IO exception, it can be array index out of bounds exception, it can be null pointer exception, it can be class cast exception. So if you write catch of exception as your very first catch block, that is following immediately after try, then any type of exception will be caught by this exception class itself, because it is the parent of all exceptions. Then there is no point for the other catch blocks. And in Java, unreachable code itself is exception. That's what here you can see, unreachable catch block for number format exception. It is already handled by the catch block for exception. The same thing you can see for IO exception, unreachable catch block for IO exception. It is already handled by the catch block for exception. So the point to be noted is, so whatever the catch blocks you are writing, it's up to you. But just make sure that the subtypes are written first and then the base types are written next. If you write the base type first, then everything will be handled by the base type, not giving chance for the subtypes, which is also exception. Just remember this point. So when you write multiple catch blocks, utmost care need to be taken that the subtypes must be written first and then only the base types must be coming. If base type comes first, then everything will be handled by base type, not letting the subtype to execute. So unreachable blocks is also exception in Java. So remember this point. This might be one of the questions which you can expect in the assessment exams, because what they will be doing is they will just give you some piece of code like this and they will ask you what will be the output. So you should be checking whether the subtypes coming first or base type coming first. If subtypes coming first, you can just check for the statements and predict the output. If base types comes first, don't look for any other option, directly give the compile time error as the correct answer. So this is the point to be noted, and this is what, and here when you write multiple catch blocks, by default it will be checked in the order in which you write. Whenever an exception occurs in the try block, by default the control comes to the catch blocks in the order what you write, and whichever match happens, that appropriate catch block will be executed, and immediately control, once the appropriate catch block is executed, control comes to the immediate next statement like this. So control comes here like this. This is how you should understand. So once an exception is encountered while executing the try block, the appropriate catch block will be executed and control will never go back to try, and control comes directly to the immediate next statement after all catch blocks. So this is the point to be noted here. And another point I want you to remember here is, now here you can see, so here throws IO exception, number format exception, and here there is only one throw, new IO exception. So in this I am just printing this, and here if I just print this, this particular code what I have written is not for showing you output purpose, just for understanding. So here you can see what you are getting. So java.io exception, this is coming from the catch block what you have written, and here you can see line number 7 and line number 11. So this is what the stack trace. So it is saying how this particular exception occurred. So this particular exception occurred because of this particular method which is in exception demo class, which is in talent package. So you have to understand all this information given by the stack trace, because it will be helpful for debugging purpose. So you should understand the output that it is saying IO exception is thrown. Why? Because of from talent package, from exception demo class, from method M, line number 7, which we have this throw statement, and it is thrown to again talent package, exception demo class, main method. In line number 11 it's being handled, and since I haven't written any message, I'm just getting the stack trace. So this stack trace method, as I said, it will be used to print the program's execution stack. What if I just remove this e dot print stack trace, and if I just fill in with my own code? That is also possible. You can just fill in your own code like this. So here you can see what I have done. So I have just removed the stack trace, because I said it's only for your understanding. Now when I have just removed it, and once again let's debug, run this. So now you can see IO and high are being printed. So IO and high are being printed. So here when control comes to the main, and here you can see M is being called, and method M is throwing new IO exception, and there is no corresponding catching block of this IO exception, and again control comes back to this calling place, and in the calling place the first catch block is number format, which is not mapping with the exception being thrown. So it checks with the second block, so it is matching, so the corresponding catch block got executed, and after that again control comes back to the immediate next statement after all catch blocks. So this is being printed. So I hope everyone understood this. Now let me give you another example. Now what I'll do is I'll just create another class here. I want to show you one more example here for you. So class test 1111 extends exception demo. So you can just see what I'm just doing. So I have just created another class which I am making it subclass to the exception demo class, that is the above class itself. So this class itself I am just making it as this parent for this test 11, and the point what I want to convey here is void M. Now here you can see this is the overridden method. This particular exception demo class is containing a method M. Okay, it's a static method anyway. Yeah, static methods cannot be overridden now. That's what the error. Suppose if I just do this, but here it will come error. Anyway, what we will do is we will just create an object OB for this exception demo in this main. So in the, because non-static methods cannot be called directly from the static method, so for that reason I am just creating a okay. Now the error is resolved there. Now if you observe, so here we have a method M that is saying it throws IO exception or number format exception, and here there is another method void M, and suppose if I just say here throws and if I say some, okay, I just say some class cast exception. So here this particular method anyway, annotations I haven't discussed with you, so let me not get into that. What I'm trying to show you is actually, because when you have base class and subclass, in general, when you are having base class and subclass, so whatever the overriding method is there, it must be throwing the same types of exceptions as thrown by the parent class. So that's the actual thumb rule. The thumb rule is that the subclass overridden method must be throwing the same types of exceptions as thrown by the parent. Otherwise, it will not be a valid overridden method. It will not be a valid overridden method. So that's the thumb rule here. So I think from Java 8 onwards, it's being removed. If I remove this, okay, anyway, I think from 8 onwards, it's being replaced. But the thumb rule is that when you have superclass and subclass, so whatever the superclass method throws the exceptions, the same exceptions also must be thrown by the overridden method of the subclass. This is the thumb rule actually. But here it's not giving any error because it's being understood, I think. Since we are not creating anything, what if I just use here test 11? So yeah, it's nothing mistake there anyway. Here what is happening is this particular method is being called now. The overridden method is being called. So there's nothing error. Okay then, anyway you can just ignore this thumb rule. But the thumb rule before Java 8 is whatever the overriding method is there, that is the subclass overridden method, must also throw the same exceptions as thrown by the parent. So this is the thumb rule. So if it comes in theory, then you can just remember this statement what just I said. So before Java 8, so whatever the subclass is overriding the parent method, so whatever the parent method is throws, the same list of exceptions should be even thrown by the child also. Just remember that point. And another point to be noted here is you can even have nested try catches. There's nothing wrong in that. So with nested try catches, what you will be doing is you have to understand that it is completely separate there. So when you are having like this try, what happens is this particular try, if it is raising any exception, first it will be checked, does it have the corresponding catch or not. If it's not having the corresponding catch, then that exception will be thrown to the outer try. Then it will be thrown to the outer try. Understand once again. So you can even have like this nested try. So when you are having nested try, only thing what it will be doing is, so when it is processing the inside try, and if any exception occurs, then it will check, does this particular inside try have its own catch to handle this particular type of exception. If not, then it will be propagated to the outer try. If the outer try is also not having, then it will be propagated to the outer try. Like that it will be throwing it to the up to outermost try until it is being handled at some point of time or not. If it's not handled even up to the outermost try, then the JVM's default exception handler comes into picture, which prints the stack trace. That is, it prints the program's execution stack and terminates the program. So like this you can even have nested tries also possible. That will be generally done in real-time application developments. The point to be noted is the innermost try, if it's not having the catch to handle that particular innermost try's exception statement, then it will be propagated, thrown to the outer try. If it is also not having, it will be thrown to the next try. Like that, it will be thrown up to the outermost try. At some or the other point of place, it should be caught. If not caught, then finally JVM's default handler comes into picture, which prints the stack trace and then terminates the program. So this is the point to be noted. And now what we will do is, we will try to create a user defined exception and then understand with another program how the user defined exception can be used by our application. So for that, what you need to do is, you need to create your own exception that will be extending exception class. So you need to create your own exception that will be extending exception class. So if a class inherits some class, by default we will say it is of that particular type. I mean, if you have apple class extending from fruit, then automatically what do we say? Apple is a fruit. Similarly, if I have a class splendor extends bike, then what do you say? Splendor is a type of bike, because it is being extending from that particular class. I hope everyone are getting my point. So similarly, if I write my class extends exception, then automatically your class becomes an exception type. Your class becomes an exception type. So for that reason, when you want to create your own exceptions, then what you need to do is, you need to create a class and you need to extend your class exception class. So when you have your class extending from exception class, then your class becomes of type exception. So here whatever the exceptions we have just used so far here are IO exception, null pointer exception, class cast exception, array index out of bounds exception. All these are inbuilt exceptions, and as I said, majority of the exceptions are part of the java.lang package, which is the default package that gets imported to every Java program, whereas other exceptions are there, like IO exception being part of IO package. Similarly, SQL exception being part of SQL package. We will come across that SQL exception in coming days when we will be creating applications for JDBC. So for JDBC, I am using Oracle database, because according to Wipro, they are using Oracle. Whereas if at all we are going with Virtusa, they will be using MySQL. So whatever might be the database, but the regular flow and the steps are same. So don't worry about that. Anyway, now as I said, let me create one user defined exception and create another program where I am going to use this user defined exception. So for that, let me create a new class, and you can give any name to this particular class, but generally, like you can see, number format exception. The class name is actually number format. Just to make everyone to understand, we are appending. I mean, they have appended the name exception. Similarly, IO exception. The class name is actually IO, but they are appended exception. So, like that, generally, whatever the exceptions you are going to give, they should append the word exception for making everyone to understand that it's not a normal class, it's an exception class. So it's for improving readability of your code. For improving readability of your code, what you have to do is, whatever the class name you want, you can use it, but just make sure that whatever the class name you are writing, append at the last exception word, so that whoever sees the name, they will understand. So it's not a regular class, it's an exception class. So I'm just creating one class, Invalid Age Exception. I'm just creating a class, Invalid Age Exception. I'll just tell why I'm creating this particular class. So what is this invalid age exception is, I am just creating a simple constructor which I am going to return. It's indicating that age cannot be less than 18. You just assume that I am having a class where I'm just checking for right to vote, and we know that age less than 18 cannot have the right to vote, and if the age is less than 18, I want to raise this exception. For that reason, I'm just creating this particular class. And as I said, every class, I mean, if you are creating an exception class, then your class should extend exception class. So here you can see my class name is Invalid Age Exception. Since it is extending from exception class, it is clear that it is an exception type. The super type itself will be applicable for this subclasses by nature. And then public invalid age exception. So I am creating my own constructor, so that when this particular exception is being raised by the respective applications, then automatically my own constructor I am just using sys out control space, and then I'm just saying user defined exception, a simple message. But whenever we are doing projects, we cannot rely on only the inbuilt exceptions. Compulsory we will be asked to create our own exceptions. Remember this point. For that reason, I am just showing this user defined exception. And even in the final part of your final assessment exam, I said you that you will be having three parts. First MCQ based test, and then the logic building based test, and finally the project which you need to develop. In that project also you have to define your own exception. You will be creating your own user defined exception. So for that reason, I'm just showing how you will be creating your own exception. And then I'm going to override the method. And remember this point, since you are creating exception class, always make sure that your exception constructor will be public. And in the last session we have discussed about this access specifiers, because you will be dealing with several packages during your project development, and you might be requiring user defined exceptions being used in various packages of your project. For that reason, whatever the user defined exceptions that you are creating, just make sure that all the user defined exceptions that you are creating are public, and the constructors of those user defined exceptions are also public, so that you can uh, raise these particular exceptions in any of the packages of your project. And then here I am just overriding my string to string method of object class. This we have seen in earlier sessions also. You can just refer that. So this string to string method will be returning string, and this method is of the object class. So age cannot be less than 18. It's a very simple message I am returning. So whichever application will be validating the age given by the end user, they have to check this particular constraint, and if the age given by the end user is less than 18, then you are going to call this particular exception. That's what this exception class which I created. So here it's very simple. I just created a class saying invalid age exception, and since I'm saying it's going to be exception class and not a regular class, I have just extended my class from the supermost class for all exceptions, that is exception class, and I overridden the toString method of the object class, and through that I am just returning the message age cannot be less than 18. This is the simple class which I created. And now in order to use this, I'll just create one more program. Let's create one more class and then write a simple code for understanding that. So user defined exception So these are the coding standards. You just need to understand when I am using the naming conventions. So as per the coding standards, you should be using the names that makes everyone understand. The readability of the code should be appropriate. Nobody should again ask what this is for, what this is for, like that. In such a way, you should use the names for variables or methods or for classes. So in this, what I'm going to do is, so user defined exception demo, and in this what I'll do is I'll just simply create one flag variable. You will understand while I run this code why I have taken so and so variables, all that. And then okay, this has to be instance variable. Let me cut this and paste it above main method. And then here what I'll be doing is I'll just write try, and then int age equal to integer dot percent of args of 0. So I'm just reading or I'm passing the age from the command line argument. That's what it just says. Next, so whatever this error, you can just understand, because try cannot be idle like that. It should either be associated with the catch or finally. That's what that error. It will be coming until you write your own catch block or finally block. Integer dot percent args of 0. So this is for converting that. And then if age is less than 18, so what am I supposed to do? If age is less than 18, I am supposed to raise the exception, throw new. So I hope you remember the name what I gave. So I have just given the name invalid age exception. So I am just reusing the same name, invalid age exception. I hope everyone understood this statement. So I am just reading the age from the command line argument, and whatever the age being provided, if it is less than 18, then I am calling my own exception, that is invalid age exception. And then what should be happened? For that reason, we will be writing our own exception. And then here what you will be doing is so catch array index out of bounds. As I said, always a good program should be not being terminated. Whatever the program written by the program, it should never be terminated. In such a way, the code should be written. So I hope you can understand why I am writing this catch block, because array index out of bounds exception is required if the command line argument is not given. If the command line argument is not given, then this particular array index out of bounds exception is required. So if at all this particular block gets executed, I am just setting the flag 1. Initially I have set the flag to 0 now. So that's what. And now similarly, if the expected field is integer, and if at all character is passed instead of giving integer, that is the age, so then number format exception comes. So observe this. Now why I have written number format exception is because if at all the command line argument being passed is not an integer, if it's a character, then number format exception is encountered. So you should understand while you write the code what are the possible exceptions, and accordingly you should write. And next, if at all argument is not passed, then array index out of bounds exception. If argument is passed, but if it is not an integer, number format exception. And if it is not greater than 18, then invalid age exception. So for that reason I have just used this. Now you can see all the errors are gone. So no error is there. You can check it here. If any error is there, it will come here red mark. Now if at all any of these things are being done, I am setting the flag to 1, and then what we do is I am just printing E. What will be happening you will understand. And then if flag double equal to 0, then it's a very simple application just to make you understand how to use user defined exceptions. So this is my program. Now it's ready for execution. Once again I am just showing this is my invalid age exception class, which I have defined my own constructor. And always do remember that your class should extend this exception class, and always the user defined exception should be declared public, and the constructors also should be declared public. And in real time compulsory, every user defined exception class being defined by you should override the public string to string method of the object class, and this string to string method is of the object class. And in this user defined exception demo, simply I have just taken a flag variable 0 just to understand that if the exception is raised, whatever might be the type of exception, if exception is raised, then I am setting the flag to 1. If exception is not raised, then the initially set flag value 0 will be there, and then that I am just using to display the message success. So it's very simple. And in this particular main method, you can just see I am just checking for the condition. If age is less than 18, then only I am raising this exception. Now for this you can just see run as Java application. Okay, here it is coming, the window. Okay, here we are not displaying any message now, so that's the reason you are not getting any output. Actually you are supposed to get this array index out of bounds exception, but I haven't displayed any message here. So let's write a simple message AIOB, just a shortcut for array index out of bounds. Similarly, let us include this number format exception also, because you are not getting any message. That's the reason you will not be able to understand. Just to understand what type of exception occurred, here I will just write NF indicating number format exception. And now let's save this, and let me once again run this. So here you can see the message AIOB is being displayed. So what is this AIOB being displayed? So it's from here. It's coming from here. That means, here. That means since you are not passing any argument, you are getting this block executed. And since the flag value is set to 1, and you are not getting any success message being displayed. Now let us pass the arguments. We have seen in the earlier classes how to pass. Go to run configurations, and in the arguments tab give the argument. If I am giving some A, and then I have just given one argument A, so which will be the args of 0, and then click on apply, close, and then once again right click, run Java application, and then here you can see NF. What is NF? Number format exception, this one. So it occurred because of this block being executed. So what is the reason? Because the expected argument is provided, but it's not a number. So let us again go to run configurations and change the argument from A to 15, and then click on apply, and then close, and again get back to your code and right click, run as Java application. So now you can see the messages, user defined exception, age cannot be less than 18. So from where you are getting these messages? So these messages you are getting it from your user defined exception. So this statement got executed and this statement got executed. How? Here you can see, here when you are calling the constructor, so the constructor got executed, and when you are printing e, that is the object itself. Which object? I mean the invalid age exceptions object. So when you are printing the invalid age exceptions object, then what gets executed is the toString method of the object class gets executed. When you are printing the object itself, then the toString method of the object gets executed. For that reason, we have overridden our own toString method. Remember this point when you are going to develop projects. As I said, compulsory you have to define your own exceptions, and when you define your own exceptions, you must and should override this toString method. And remember the fact that this toString method which we are writing, it is being overridden from the object class. So this toString method is the method of object class. So we are just overriding it. So, and this toString method which we are overriding will be returning string, and this string will be displayed when the object itself is being printed. So that's the output you can see. So whenever you are printing the object of the exception, then the toString method gets executed. Since you are invoking the constructor here, since you are calling the constructor message also got executed. It's up to you whether you want to have constructor message or not. It's all up to you. So this is how a simple application which I have written here. You can see how you are writing multiple catch blocks and how they get executed. Now let us make things normal, everything fine, and let me just give here age as 18, and then click on apply, close, and then here right click, and then run as Java application, and here you can see the message success. So if all things are normal, then definitely you get the application run successfully. So here you can just see that it's expecting argument. So we have given that argument, and it's expecting an integer. So we have given an integer. That's the reason these two blocks are skipped. And it's expecting the age to be not less than 18, and we have given that. That's the reason none of the catch blocks got executed. So directly we got this success message printed. So this is how you will be using the user defined exceptions. I hope everyone understood how to create user defined exceptions. And very quickly, before winding up the session, I want to show you one more thing, that is okay, directly here itself I'll just show you. Suppose if I'm just writing here import java dot util dot, okay, for timing let me just give this. Similarly, import java dot sql dot star, and here in the main method what I'm just doing is I'm just trying to create an object date d equal to new date. So as part of packages, this one single point I haven't covered, so for that reason I have written. Now here you can just see when I'm just creating a object for the date class which is inbuilt in Java by default, so you are getting an error. The reason is here I have imported two of the packages, one is util package and SQL package, and in SQL package actually we have a date class, and in util package we have a date class. And since you have imported both the packages, now the compiler is confused which of the object to be created. When you just see here, you can see two of the options are given to you. Import java.sql.date explicitly import java.util.date. Like this, options are given. The type date is ambiguous. Now when I write like this, still the same thing. Now what you have to do is, in such cases what you have to do is, don't use star, because star indicates importing everything. So you should be very familiar which one you are doing. But similarly, you can't use for both the same. And here what you have to do is okay, since I am having both, and here now automatically what happens is, when I write like this is one way. This is one way. I'll just show you both the options. Now when I write like this, since you have written util.date, so automatically now compiler is not confused, because it understands that since you have written star, so SQL package might be imported for some other reason. Since you are importing date exclusively from util package, whatever the object you are creating, it is for java.util. This is one way. Just understand, I'll show you another way. So when you are writing star, and when both the packages have same class with the same name, I mean same name of class, then in such case, for one of that you should write star, for the other one you should be writing specific. This is one way. Now it's not confused. Now compiler is not confused, because since you have written here SQL.star, it understands that SQL package you are importing for some other classes, and since you have written exclusively java.util.date, whatever the object you are creating, it's exclusively for java.util.date. What if both you are writing star only? Suppose if you are writing both star only, then what you have to do is, you should be using the complete name. We also say in industry terms fully qualified name. We also say in industry terms fully qualified name. So what I have to do is, here I have to write like this: java.util.date equal to new java.util.date. So now you can see the error is resolved. So this is the one small point which I have missed while discussing the packages concept. So when you have different packages, same class name, and when you are trying to create object where these both packages are imported, then you have two options. One is, just make sure that one of the package contains the fully qualified name, the other contains star. This is first option. Second option is, if you are importing both packages entirely, then when you are creating object, just use the fully qualified name. This is what fully qualified name is. Rather than just using the name date d equal to new date, I'm just using the fully qualified name, that is java.util.date d equal to new java.util.date. Just making the compiler don't get confused. So the object for which I am asking you to create is for java.util.date. I hope everyone understood these 2 points. So this is a, you will be dealing with exception handling. And with this I have covered packages concepts as well. Let's get back to this PBL. So Java fundamentals are covered, oops or inheritance covered, Eclipse overview I have just given now the enough options that are required for you. Here abstraction, packages, exception handling I have covered. And okay, I think you can understand the use of finally. I haven't shown you using finally, but just understand that finally. Okay, very quickly I'll just show you the use of finally. I haven't used it, but it's very simple to understand. Now here if I just use this finally block, So in this case, now what happens is, this is a successful execution. So you can see finally being executed. For suppose if I just modify the argument. Okay, but first let's remove this, apply, close. Since I haven't shown this finally, I've just added finally and trying to show you. Theoretically I said you. Now here you can see AIOB, that is array index out of bounds exception occurred because expected one argument and no argument provided, but still you can see finally being executed. So this is the theoretical concept which I have discussed with you in the last class. So finally is one such block which gets executed whether exception occurs or doesn't occur. Suppose if I just pass capital A, now you know that it will raise a number format exception. So you can see number format exception is raised and finally is still getting executed. And similarly, if at all you give some age less than 18, apply and close and run as Java application. So you can see user defined exception is raised and still finally got executed. So this is the point just need to be noted. So try is the block which contains statements that might cause some exceptions, and catch is the block which contains the handling code if the exception is thrown from try, and finally is one such block which gets executed whether exception occurs or not occurs, and throws is used to give list of exceptions that the method might throw which are not handled by the method itself. So who should handle those exceptions is the method calling this method, like this. In this case here main is calling this m method na, so it should be handled by main only, like that, and throw is used to explicitly throw the exception. So this is what the complete exception handling is all about. And I just want you to go through the quiz parts. So from here only quiz parts. So is there any problem? Just observe the code. Yeah, here the problem is this particular statement. I have already discussed in my last session. You cannot have even a single statement in between try and catch. So that's the error there. You can't have even a single statement in between try and catch. So here what is the error? Yeah, this also I said you in today's class only. When you write multiple catch blocks, care need to be taken that the subtypes are written first and then only the base type should be written. Here catch of runtime exception, which is the super type, cannot be written before number format exception. So number format exception can never be checked. That's the error here. So this is the quiz. And nested tries I have said you. So by default, if the inner try doesn't have the appropriate catch, it will be thrown to the outer try. If outer try also not having, it will be thrown to the outermost try, like that. So you can just see that. So debug this code. Yeah, again it will be error. Again the same thing. Again they are asking you. So catch of exception E can never be written as the very first block before the other catch block. So that's the error here. Yeah, that's about this try catch. And coming to throws clause, let's quickly see if any quiz questions are there. Let's discuss, because this discussion I should make with you since we are online. I'm just giving you the answers. So this is what the error I said, but I think even they haven't upgraded. So here you can see file not found exception and here IO exception, because here file not found exception is another type and the subclass is throwing another type. So this is the overridden method. This is what I just tried to explain you, but anyway it's ruled out. Now this particular statement is ruled out with the latest versions. And this is okay. Here you can see no error, because how do you understand this? Super type should be the first one in the super class. Subtype can be there in the subclass. Here in the previous case, if you observe, superclass is having file not found exception, which is subclass of IO exception. File not found exception is subclass to IO exception. Remember that point. So if you check the Java doc, you will understand file not found exception is created with extending from IO exception. So here file not found exception, you cannot have it first and then the super type for the subclass, but this is fine. So this is the point to be noted. IO exception is there and then file not found exception. This is illegal. And it's given the answer there itself, no error, compilation successful. So this will throw compilation error. So here again the same thing, file not found exception here, SQL exception here. So this will throw compilation error. Again the same thing, as I said, here throws IO exception and runtime exception, but here this you can see that okay, it's throwing only IO exception but not throwing runtime exception, and but still calling this new plain method. So why it will throw compile time error is because we have just discussed. So when the method is saying it might throw these possible exceptions, then who should handle? The calling method. Here the calling method is main, and main is just saying throws IO exception. So it should handle this runtime exception but not doing that. So that's the compile time error here. And coming to throw clause, any quiz questions? Let's quickly discuss. Okay, match the following. An exception is. So what is the answer? Yeah, option C. For option A in column A, the mapping is option B, option C in column B. So an exception is an event that can disrupt the normal flow instructions. Next, throwable. Yeah, option D. For throwable, it is option D. This class is at the top of exception hierarchy. I have shown you that in the previous class. Next, arithmetic exception is, yeah, option B, caused by dividing an integer by 0. So it's simple. Catch block is an exception handler. Next, throw is used to throw an exception explicitly. So these all I should discuss with you, but unfortunately we are locked down. So that's the reason I am telling the answers directly. And here, do you find things are fine? Obviously no. Here things are not fine because again the same answer in the previous file we have seen. Void method is saying it might throw IO exception, and here it's not handling IO exception, and the calling method main also not handling IO exception. So that's the error. Yeah, that's it here. And lastly, finally clause. Let's see if any quiz questions are there. So print stack trace method I have already said you. It will print like this stack trace, making you understand that this so and so exception occurred because of from this method, and this method have thrown, and this method has to handle, but still it is thrown to this method, and finally it got terminated because of main also not handling. So with line numbers it will give you like that. So what is the reason for this compilation error? Yeah, here again the same. Finally you cannot have with the break in between catch and finally. That's the error here. Here you are having try and catch, that's fine, but in between catch and finally you can't have this system.out.println. So that's the compilation error reason here. And answer is there. It will throw compilation error. Why? How to remove the same? So method is called and method is throwing exception, and here catch you are having throwable E. So throwable is the supermost class, so fine, and inside this throwable again there is try and throw new exception, and it's being handled here. Yeah, the same reason. Here what is happening is catch is there, but again it is throwing, and which is being caught. Here actually if you don't have this throw, then it's fine. If you don't have this throw, then it would have been fine, because inside catch anyway exception is caught. So in this nested catch what is happening is this particular handling is ignored. So that's the thing. You have to either remove the statement here, or you have to write this catch outside completely. Instead of having this catch inside, you can write this catch completely outside. So that's the way. I hope everyone understood today's class, and if any of you are having any queries, you can just post your queries in the comment section. If no queries, you can straight away post your roll numbers in the comment section. I repeat, if any of you have any queries with regard to today's session, you can just post your queries in the comment section. If no queries, post your roll numbers in the comment section. So I don't see any queries being posted. I hope everyone understood today's class. So tomorrow's class is going to be important, because I am going to discuss the wrapper classes and JUnit. I will show how the JUnit test cases will be created. So I think JUnit is not covered as part of your curriculum for both CSE or ECE. So tomorrow I will show how to create a JUnit. That's creating test cases with a small program. We will create a small program, and then we will apply JUnit, and we will see how the things are being passed as test cases. All that we will see with examples. So tomorrow's agenda is wrapper classes and JUnit. So since no queries, and since everyone have posted your roll numbers as attendance, let's wind up for today, and let's meet tomorrow at 10:30 AM again. Bye.